Ever felt like you're walking on eggshells while everything around you seems perfect? What if I told you that the person you trust most could be pulling the strings behind the scenes? In the next 10 minutes, you'll learn the 5 unmistakable signs that someone is manipulating you and how to break free before it's too late. Stay with me because the first sign is something you've probably done every day without even noticing. Hi, I'm a certified life coach and former therapist who has helped dozens of people untangle toxic dynamics that were ruining their confidence, relationships, and even careers. What ties them all together? A manipulator who knows exactly how to make you doubt your own reality. Today, I'm giving you a personal radar. By the end of this video, you'll be able to spot the 5 classic tactics a manipulator uses, recognize them in real time, and start defending yourself. So grab a notebook, hit pause if you need to, and let's dive into the first red flag. Love bombing. Love bombing is the excessive showering of affection, compliments, and gifts in a very short period, designed to create a strong emotional bond before any red flag appears. Imagine a new partner who texts you every hour, calls you my soulmate after only a few days, and floods you with flowers and surprise trips. In a workplace, you might have a manager who constantly praises your work, offers after-hours coffee, and then asks for your weekend availability for a critical project, all while making you feel uniquely valued. The brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals, making you associate that person with safety and pleasure. That rush creates a powerful attachment that can blind you to later manipulation. The psychological mechanism behind love bombing is called intermittent reinforcement. The manipulator alternates between intense affection and subtle withdrawal, keeping you on a roller coaster of hope and doubt. You start to chase the high moments, hoping to recapture that early excitement. Over time, the initial sparkle fades, but the habit of seeking approval remains, and you become more compliant to preserve the connection. Ask yourself this. Do you feel a sudden surge of gratitude or relief when someone goes out of their way for you? And then later you notice they ask for favors that feel uncomfortable. If the answer is yes, you might be experiencing love bombing.
Now picture a friend who constantly tells you how amazing you are, shares inside jokes, and invites you to exclusive events,
only to later ask you to cover for them at work or keep a secret that harms you. The pattern is the same. An overload of positive reinforcement that creates a debt you feel obliged to repay. The key to spotting love bombing is to pause and assess the timeline. True relationships develop gradually, with trust building over weeks and months, not in a whirlwind of compliments and gifts. When the intensity feels too fast, it's a warning sign. If you recognize this pattern, the next step is to set boundaries. Thank the person for their kindness, but gently limit the frequency of contact and the scope of requests. Observe how they react. A manipulator will often try to guilt-trip you or downplay your concerns, reinforcing the need for you to stay vigilant. Remember, the goal isn't to become cynical about every act of kindness, but to develop a healthy sense of discernment. By noticing the speed and purpose behind the affection, you protect yourself from being drawn into a cycle of control.
If this is opening your eyes, hit that subscribe button and let's keep exploring together.
Now, let's move on to the second red flag signal, a tactic that can leave you doubting your own memory and sense of reality. I'm talking about gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where the person repeatedly denies facts, twists events, or outright lies in order to make you question what you know to be true. Imagine you mention a conversation you had about a deadline, and the other person insists you never said that, even though you have a screenshot. Over time, this constant denial erodes your confidence, making you rely on the manipulator for clarity. Think about a partner who always says, "You're overreacting," when you express hurt, or a coworker who claims you missed a meeting that you clearly attended. The pattern is the same. The manipulator reframes reality, often using a calm, reassuring tone that makes the denial feel reasonable. The brain's response to gaslighting is rooted in cognitive dissonance. When the information you receive from a trusted source conflicts with your own memory, your mind experiences discomfort. To reduce that discomfort, you may start to accept the manipulator's version because it feels less chaotic. The manipulator also exploits the brain's need for coherence, offering a simple, if false, narrative that replaces the messy truth. Ask yourself this. When you recall a specific event, do you immediately feel a tug of doubt, as if you're suddenly unsure whether it happened the way you remember? Do you find yourself apologizing for things that you know you didn't do just to keep the peace? If that resonates, you may be dealing with gaslighting. How can you protect yourself? First, start documenting. Keep a journal or take screenshots of important conversations. When you notice a discrepancy, refer back to the evidence calmly. Second, set a boundary by stating, "I remember this differently, and here's the record." Observe the reaction. A true manipulator will try to deflect, blame, or minimize the evidence, often turning the focus back onto you with statements like, "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Remember, the goal isn't to become paranoid about every miscommunication, but to create a reliable anchor that keeps you grounded when someone tries to rewrite the script. If you've ever felt that unsettling feeling of walking on a mental tightrope, let me know in the comments below. Kopinas. Have you ever caught yourself second-guessing a memory because someone else insisted otherwise? Moving forward, the third red flag is a subtler, yet equally damaging, strategy known as triangulation. This is when a manipulator brings a third party into the dynamic to create competition, jealousy, or a sense of exclusion. Picture a friend who constantly compares you to another colleague, saying, "She always finishes projects on time, you should try harder," or a romantic partner who drops hints that someone else is interested in them, prompting you to chase their attention. The purpose of triangulation is to keep you off balance. By positioning you against another person, the manipulator gains control over the narrative and your emotions. The brain reacts to social comparison with a surge of cortisol, the stress hormone, which can make you feel anxious or inadequate. This heightened stress makes it easier for the manipulator to dictate terms because you're busy trying to prove yourself rather than evaluating the situation objectively. Ask yourself, do you often hear remarks like, "Everyone else seems to get more credit," or "I heard they're planning something without me"? Do you feel compelled to compete for approval, even when the stakes feel arbitrary? If those thoughts appear frequently, triangulation may be at play. To counter this, start by recognizing that the third party is being used as a pawn. Ask direct questions. Who else is involved in this decision? Or, what's the real reason you're bringing this up? When the manipulator cannot provide a clear answer, the fog lifts. Additionally, reinforce your own self-worth independent of external validation. Remind yourself that your value isn't measured by how many people compare you or how many compliments you receive from outside sources. A practical exercise is to write down the facts of any situation without the emotional overlay. List who said what, when, and what the outcome was. When you compare this neutral record to the narrative the manipulator is feeding you, the discrepancy becomes evident.
If you've ever felt caught in a rivalry that seemed manufactured, share your story below. Your experience could help others spot triangulation before it spirals.
Now we arrive at the fourth red flag, a form of silent control that many underestimate, the silent treatment, also called emotional withholding. This tactic involves refusing to communicate, giving the cold shoulder, or deliberately ignoring you until you comply with a demand. Picture a partner who stops responding to texts after you voice a concern, or a family member who simply disappears from gatherings after you set a boundary. The silent treatment is powerful because it taps into our innate need for social connection. Humans are wired to seek belonging. When that belonging is threatened, the brain releases a mixture of anxiety and yearning, compelling us to act in order to restore the connection. The manipulator uses this vulnerability as leverage, essentially saying, "If you want me to talk to you again, you must meet my terms." Ask yourself, after you raise an issue, does the other person go quiet for an extended period, leaving you feeling unsettled and desperate to fix the situation? Do you find yourself sending multiple messages, apologizing, or changing your stance just to break the silence? If those patterns ring true, you might be encountering emotional withholding. Breaking free requires a two-step approach. First, recognize the silence as a tactic, not a natural response. When you notice the pattern, resist the urge to chase immediate reconciliation. Instead, Give yourself a clear mental boundary. I will not engage until we can have a respectful conversation. Second, communicate your boundaries calmly and assertively. You might say, I notice that we're not talking right now. I'm willing to discuss this when we can both speak openly. If the manipulator continues to withhold, you may need to limit your exposure and seek support from trusted friends or professionals. Remember, healthy relationships thrive on open dialogue, not on enforced quiet. By refusing to be drawn back into the cycle of silence, you reclaim agency over your emotional well-being. If you've ever been left in the dark and felt the pressure to bend, tell us how you handled it.
Your insights could be a lifeline for someone else stuck in the same pattern.
Finally, we come to the fifth and often most insidious red flag, guilt tripping, also known as emotional blackmail. This is when a manipulator frames their request in a way that makes you feel responsible for their happiness, safety, or well-being. Imagine a friend who says, if you really cared about me, you would help me move this weekend. Or a parent who whispers, I'm getting older, and I need you to be here for me now. Otherwise, I'll be alone. The emotional core of guilt tripping lies in the brain's empathy circuits. When someone you care about expresses distress, your mirror neurons fire, prompting you to alleviate that discomfort. The manipulator exploits this natural empathy, turning it into a lever to extract compliance. Over time, you may start to anticipate guilt as a cue for action, even when the request is unreasonable. Ask yourself, do you often feel a heavy sense of responsibility when someone subtly implies that your love or loyalty is measured by your willingness to do what they want? Do you find yourself saying yes to tasks that clash with your own needs, just to avoid feeling selfish or uncaring? If yes, guilt tripping may be at work. To dismantle this dynamic, start by identifying the underlying assumption. If I don't do this, I'm a bad person. Challenge that premise by asking, is my worth truly dependent on fulfilling this request? Then, practice assertive refusal. You might respond, I understand you're feeling upset, but I'm not able to help with that right now. Notice how the manipulator may try to intensify the pressure, perhaps by raising their voice or bringing up past favors. Stay firm and keep the focus on your boundary rather than their emotional reaction. A helpful exercise is to rehearse a neutral response in front of a mirror, such as, I hear you, and I'm sorry you're feeling this way, but I need to look after my own responsibilities. Repetition builds confidence, making it easier to stand your ground when the real situation arises. If you've ever felt trapped by a subtle accusation of selfishness, share how you navigated that moment.
Your story could empower others to break free from the cycle of guilt.
We've now covered the 5 hallmark signals that point to manipulative behavior: love bombing, gaslighting, triangulation, silent treatment, and guilt tripping. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming your autonomy and fostering healthier connections. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Which of these red flags have you encountered most often in your life? How did you respond? And what would you do differently now that you have this toolkit? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's learn from each other's experiences.
If this video helped you see the hidden dynamics that may be influencing your relationships, give it a thumbs up.
Your support lets the algorithm know that this content is valuable, and it helps more people find the information they need. Remember, you deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and mutual care. By staying alert to these warning signs, you can protect your mental and emotional health.
And you can walk away from toxicity with confidence. Thank you for spending this time with me.
If you'd like more insights on navigating complex interpersonal dynamics,
consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you won't miss future videos. Until next time, stay observant, stay kind to yourself, and keep moving toward the life you truly deserve.